The last type of hypersensitivity, and this is the only one that is not humoral. This is cell-mediated, is type 4 hypersensitivity, and it's also referred to as the delayed hypersensitivity. It's also referred to as the delayed hypersensitivity. So this one involves tissue damage, and this tissue damage is triggered by primed T cells. That is why. So T cells are involved in this case. And why it's called delayed, it's because it takes between 1 and 2 days for the response to occur. It takes between 1 and 2 days for the response to occur. So what happens in this case is that the T cells are activated. Once the T cells are activated, they're able to recognize antigens. And if they're able to recognize antigens, they produce cytokines. And the most common cytokine that is produced is interferon gamma. And this interferon gamma, of course, activates macrophages. And the macrophages, what they do is they trigger tissue damage. Of course, they're going to form granulomas in most cases. What usually happens is that there's going to be histological characteristics. So the tissue is damaged. The tissue is damaged because of these macrophages. So this is triggered by T cells. So T cells produce cytokines, especially interferon gamma. Interferon gamma activates macrophages. Macrophages now react and they cause damages. An example is the Montux test. The tuberculin skin test. I'm sure if you've undergone BCG, definitely you can hiyo alama. Kama wewe ni Mkenya, of course, you have the scar that forms mostly on the left hand where the tuberculin, the BCG is done. So it takes time. Of course, if you are to look at a child who's been vaccinated, maybe 2 or 3 days after you go in a form. So it's just an example of a granuloma. Fortunately, yesterday we were able to understand what a granuloma is in detail. So it actually what is taking place is that it takes a bit of time, but macrophages come into place and they recruit the site of injury, and of course they're able now to kind of form tissue damage at that particular site. So ideally, there's chronic granuloma formation. There is chronic granuloma formation. And this is usually delayed, as we've said. It's just not immediate, it's delayed. It takes a bit of time for it to form. There is activation through MHC class 1, and of course that involves CD8 T cells for that to happen. Examples of type 4 hypersensitive reactions would be some of the infectious diseases that are able to cause this are bacteria like tuberculosis. Even the tuberculin skin test is just to tell you that you have tuberculosis in your body. Leprosy, of course, is another type of bacteria that is Mycobacterium. It's in the same genus as tuberculosis, but it's in Mycobacterium leprae. Viruses like smallpox, measles, herpes, they're able to cause that. Fungi like candidiasis and histoplasmosis are able. We also saw yesterday that eggs, schistosomiasis eggs, granulomas can form very quickly. Of course, that shows that is delayed hypersensitivity. Leishmaniasis also can cause that. Also have what we call contact dermatitis. So when you are exposed to chromates, you are exposed to poison ivy and other irritants, it's also possible to have that. We have some insect bites that can lead to this delayed hypersensitivity. Psoriasis also is another condition that is common, of course, for individuals. So it's fairly common to have individuals with psoriasis, and psoriasis is as a result of delayed hypersensitivity, of course, and this is driven by T cells and macrophages. So they're able to cause skin inflammation, and these individuals appear like they are burnt. Their skin appears like burnt, but that is not the case. It is just a delayed hypersensitivity that takes place as a result of T cells being activated. So T cells are the ones that trigger this, and of course they are going to cause the production of interferon gamma. Interferon gamma activates macrophages. Macrophages form granulomas, and that inflammatory response can appear like skin. The skin is peeling off. So these individuals would appear like they are burnt, and they've lost part of their skin. That is how individuals with psoriasis appear. Okay, so those are the 4 types of hypersensitivity. Any class of hypersensitivity would either be classified as either 1, 2, 3, or 4. Key things to note: class 1, we know that what is driving class 1 is IgE. And it's just people who are genetically predisposed to overproduce what? IgE. And IgE binds to mast cells. Mast cells are able to degranulate, and once they degranulate, they're able to produce mediators that bring about anaphylactic shock. That is also referred to as atopy or atopic disease. The second class, of course, is driven by IgG. IgG is the key thing there. IgG and complement. IgG causes cells that are supposed to be dying, or even complement is also involved. It opsonizes cells, and once that happens, of course, these cells are killed, and these cells cause damage in the killing of those cells by either polymorphs, by natural killer cells, or even monocytes. As they die, they bring about damage and an inflammatory response, of course. The third type of hypersensitivity is as a result of immune complexes being formed, where you're having antibody-antigen complex being formed. When antigen-antibody complex are formed, then it triggers an immune response, an inflammatory response at the site of injury. When you're seeing the site of injury is inflamed, then of course things like edema, things like infiltration of neutrophils going to happen at that particular site. And we've seen that that is very, very common, especially in diseases that are autoimmune. So those 3 are antibody or humoral related. Then the last one that is T-cell related is this type 4, it's also referred to as delayed hypersensitivity. Of course, delayed hypersensitivity takes time, and the main key thing here is granuloma formation. If you've noted anything about type 4. Yeah, so type 2 is what we also refer to as ADCC.